All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning shir. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsor for the month of Shvat, Mrs. Selma Woolf, for dedicating all the Shiurim and drushos this month. For dedicating all the Shiurim and drushos this month, with gratitude for the refuos from Hashem and the merit of a refuah for all of those in need, in the zchus of our brave soldiers and the merit of Hashem in the zchus of the return of our hostages. Our week of learning sponsors, Derek and Lauren Fine, in memory of Derek's mother, Rachayl Bas Shmuel. And of course, we dedicate all the Maseches Bava Kama Le'ilu Nishmas, Master Sergeant Eliyahu Harush Hashem Yikom Dama. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the Neshamas will have an aliya and the families a Neshama. But say with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Today is a beautiful, beautiful daf of Daf Tzadik Dalet 94. And we are picking up in Yahrzeit Hashem on Tzadik Gimel Amud Beis. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. 93b, 5 lines up from the bottom. Begin again just by wishing, again, a Mazel Tov to our Chaver Rabbi Elman on the beautiful bar mitzvah of his son Amin. This past Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, an incredible aliya for our entire kehillah. And Yahrzeit Hashem bar mitzvah should be a source of nachos. And Yahrzeit Hashem for his parents, of his entire mishpacha, and the Yahrzeit Hashem for Klal Yisrael, the Ribon Shalom Me'ah Ve'esim Sharim Tovos. Mazel Tov. And a Mazel Tov to Josh and Malki Rosenblum on being honored. All right, it's by another organization, but I'm still going to announce it anyway. I'm still going to buy Yeshiva of Greater Washington, Baruch Hashem, today. Again, a well-deserved honor, a bastion of Torah within our greater community, and the Rosenblum should be zocha to accomplish great things, not just on behalf of our community, but on behalf of Klal Yisrael for many years to come. All right, well, so with that, let us begin. So again, I already said today's daf. We are picking up 5 lines up from the bottom. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehud. A little bit further up, actually. Like 11 lines up. So I'm Rabbi Shimon Yehuda. I'm Rabbi Shimon Yehuda. 2, 4, 6, 7. This is why pay attention in school, right? Pay attention in school to help with counting, other things like that. Because 7 lines up from the bottom. I'm Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. Ube Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Shimon Elazar, Rabbi Shmuel. Kulu Sfir Lehu, Shinoi Bimkoma Omed. So remember again, we started with this concept yesterday about the concept of what happens if someone steals something and then halacha l'maisa, the object undergoes some sort of physical change. So do we say that the ganav, do we say that the thief acquires the item, and therefore again halacha l'maisa, the thief will be obligated to make financial restitution for the item, but the object itself, or for that matter again any changes in the potential item, cause the item to become the property of the ganav? Or do we say what we call shinui bimkomo omed? What does it mean shinui bimkomo omed? Even if the item undergoes a physical change, halacha l'maisa, the item still remains in the domain of the original owner. So this is the fundamental machlokes we are looking at. Remember, our Mishnah clearly indicates that once there is a shinui, once there is a change in the item, the object becomes the property of the ganav. At that point now, obviously, the ganav is chayv to make restitution. That's why the Mishnah said, how do you assess restitution? Kishas hagneva, right? Again, in accordance with the time that the object was stolen. Then there is the other opinion over here of shinui bimkomo omed. Now Abaye says, these aforementioned opinions, all of them hold shinui bimkomo omed. So says the Gemara. So we'll say, let's analyze a bit. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda hada amar. So what's Rabbi Shimon Yehuda? We already said. They're both saying, I remember again, what was the case of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda? This was the situation of Reishes Hagaz, right? That halacha l'maisa, you have to give the first shearings to the Kohen. So Rabbi Shimon Yehuda brought down this case where if you take the first shearings and you go ahead and you dye them, ultimately, again, you're still obligated in Reishes Hagaz. So you see from here that even if you physically change an item, the item still remains in the possession of the original owner. In this case, the Kohen. Okay, Beis Shammai Mahi. What's the case of Beis Shammai? What's the case of Beis Shammai? I was saying, if you think about, by the way, this machlokes, thinking about this, it was really, I have to develop it a little bit more. But this notion of shinui bimkomo omed or shinui eina bimkomo omed, that wherein lies the true power of change? Does change allow a person to even fundamentally change domains? Like, is always like something we grapple with a lot. How much? I was speaking with a psychologist this week, and he told me, he's like, people can't really change. So first thing I said is, you need to find a new profession, right? That's number one. People can't really change, right? But I understood what he was saying. What he was saying was, there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling on the amount of change a person could do. People have certain predispositions, certain people are certain ways, and there may be a ceiling. I've been thinking about this the whole week, because I don't think I agree with that, but then again, maybe that's just because I'm a layman, I'm not a mental health professional. But Lamais, I think the whole beauty of Yiddishkeit is predicated on the idea that there is no ceiling to change. Yeah, of course, we're all born with predispositions, right? We're all born with certain, whatever you want to call genetic markers or different things like this that make us a certain way. But the whole avoda of life is the ability to affect whatever level of change you're truly willing to put your heart to, you're willing to put your neshama to. I was thinking that maybe that this is this machlokes. You have shinui. So how much change could a person make? So one opinion says, shinui bim komo omedes, which means that you could create change, but there is a ceiling on that change, right? In other words, you're still always going to be rooted in a certain reality. Versus our Mishnah, which says, no, once there's shinui changes everything. Shinui removes you ultimately again from your original domain and places you fundamentally somewhere else. A fundamental machlokes in how far, how sweeping the power of change actually is. Right? We'll develop more as we go on. So fine. So Rabbi Shimon we spoke about. Beishamai Mahi, the Sanya, very interesting case. Beishamai Omrim. So Beishamai Mahi, the Sanya. Nasan lachitim be'esnana, va'asan solas, zaysin va'asan, shemen, anovim va'asan yain. So we actually had this case a number of times before. Remember again, so we'll call it, Reuven goes to a harlot. He pays her for her services, and he gives her one of these items. For example, he gives her wheat. Rabbi say, remember again, what's the halacha? The halacha is that esnan zona, something given to a zona for payment for her services, cannot be used in the Beis HaMikdash. Can't be used in the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi says, now what's the shayla? She takes the wheat and she turns it into flour. Or she takes the grapes, she turns it into wine. She takes the olives, she turns it into oil. So now can you use this transformed item in the Beis HaMikdash or not? So that's machlokes Tani Chada Aser. One opinion says Aser. The Tani Yidach, another brayso says Mutter. So what's the machlokes? Rav Yosef, so Yosef said, Tani Gurion, top of Tzadik Talmud, so it's 94a. Tani Gurion, Deme Aspurak, Beishamai Oser, Beisela Matirin. So again, this individual Gurion, he said these two braisos, they're not contradictory. It's a machlokes. Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Machlokes Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. So Beis Shammai says it's aser, and Beis Hillel says it's mutter. So right, so just understand this. So Beis Shammai says, man, call him Reuven, right? Reuven goes to the harlot. Let's just play this out. Gives her the wheat. Harlot then takes the wheat and transforms it into flour, and now wants to give it to the Beis HaMikdash. I will say, don't say to yourself, come on, she's a harlot, and now she wants to give to the Beis HaMikdash. I will say, we all do this. I mean, not this, but I'm saying, but we all do this dynamic, right? So we all live with inconsistencies. I do plenty of averos, but yet at the same time I want to do something good. So the harlot, okay, she's a harlot. This is her struggle in life. But Lamaisa, she wants to give something to the Beis HaMikdash. Now the shaila is, obviously everyone agrees she can't take the wheat and give that to the Beis HaMikdash, but can she take the flour, that is the transformed wheat, and use that in the Beis HaMikdash? So Beis Shammai says no, Beis Hillel says yes. I says, the say second line down from the top, 94a, my time in the Beis Shammai. What's Beis Shammai's logic? Why he says you can't use it? Amar Kra, gam shnehem, l'rabos shinuyehem. So the pasuk says, "Lo savi esnan zona u'mechir kelav beis Hashem elokecha l'chol neder ki soavas Hashem elokecha gam shnehem." So say this is interesting. The pasuk is talking about two things. Number one, esnan zona, which is something a zona receives for her payment for her services, and mechir kelav. Mechir kelav means something either sold for or exchanged for a dog. In other words, it's considered to be a lack of kavod to bring something to the Beis HaMikdash that was bartered for a dog. Now, the end of the pasuk says you can't. Right, these things are abominations. Gam shnehem, both of them. So Paship Shan, the pasuk is Gam shnehem is referring to what? Esnan zona mechir kelev. Apparently, Beis Hillel holds gam shnehem is l'rabos shinuyehem. He makes a little bit of a drush on the words. Gam shnehem means, again, gam shinuyehem. Even if you take the esnan zona, or the mechir kela for that matter, and you transform them into a different state, that newly transformed item is also asur for use in the Beis HaMikdash. Incredible. So we'll say Beis Hillel. So we'll say that. So that's Beis Shammai's position, and that's why Beis Shammai holds that halacha l'maaseh. Even if you transform the item, it still remains asur. Now, just understand. Why are we bringing this down? Because this notion of Beis Shammai saying even if you transform it, it still remains in its original state, is another way of saying shinui bimkomo omed. It's the same concept. That ultimately, again, even though something has changed, it still remains in its original, quote-unquote, rishus, and it still retains its original identity. It happens to be Beis Shammai is darshaning a pasuk, but conceptually, it belongs in this shinui bimkomo omed camp. That's why I'm bringing this down. All right, so we're going to get a little bit more into the shasha. Beis Hillel Omer. Beis Hillel says, Beis Hillel Omer kra, heim v'lo shinuyehem. Beis Hillel says, no. The pasuk itself says, heim, these items, to mean these items only in their original form, but once they're transformed, you can use them in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara Beis Shammai, haksiv heim. What does Beis Shammai do with the heim? Hahu mibayle heim v'lo vlado sehem. Interesting. Beis Shammai uses heim to teach you it's only these items that are asur, but ultimately, again, their offspring are asur. For example, Reuven, who goes to the zona, if he gives her a sheep, right? So the sheep obviously is precluded from use in the Beis HaMikdash, but if the sheep gives birth, then ultimately, again, the offspring would be permitted. Beis Hillel will say, Tarti shamas mina, heim, according to Beis Hillel, ultimately teaches me both of these things. Number one, again, heim v'lo shinuyehem, right? And number two, offspring. Okay, so the Gemara says, Tarti shamas mina, heim v'lo shinuyehem, heim v'lo vlado sehem. So according to Beis Hillel, that word heim teaches us both of these halachas, namely, number one, only the original item and not any changed form, and only the original item and not any offspring. Go Beis Hillel nami haksiv gam. So we'll say, what does Beis Hillel do with gam? What do they do with gam? So Gemara says, you're right, gam the Beis Hillel kasha. So gam is a kasha. So again, that leaves on result. So we'll say, so remember again, just let's keep our eye on the ball over here. What are we trying to do? Abaye told us that there's a whole list of people who hold shinui bimkomo omed. That even when an item undergoes a change, it still remains in the possession of the original owner. So all we're doing now is building out our list. So number one on the list was Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. That was the case of Reishis Hagaz, yesterday's daf, taking the wool, dyeing it still belongs to the Kohen. That was case one. Case two, Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai holds that halacha l'maaseh, even if the zona takes the wheat that she received, makes it into flour, that flour is still asur. Why? Shinui bimkomo omed. Okay, position. Our opinion number three. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Mahi. What's the position of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that holds shinui bimkomo omed? Here we go. Disanya. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. It's very interesting. Harush gazel sa'ashel chitin. If a person steals, right? Call Reuven. Reuven stole a sa'a of wheat. Tachna lasha va'afa v'hivishim enechala keisad mevarech. Wow. I will say, watch this. So Reuven steals a sa'a of wheat, and what does he do? He grinds it, he kneads it, he bakes it, and now he wants to eat mafresh challah. Again, I will say, this is our lives. This is everyday life, right? Inconsistencies, right? So the thief wants to eat mafresh challah, so Kate said mevarech. So how does he make? So what bracha do you make? So Gemara says, Kate mevarech, ein se mevarech ela menaitz. No. There's no bracha over here. Because such a bracha would not be a praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rather, say, what would it be? Be blasphemous. It would be blasphemous. Al zeh ne'emar, and exactly about this kind of bracha, what does the pasuk in Tehillim say? Botzea berach ni'etz Hashem. Literally, again, I will say that the person who makes the bracha is degrading HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blaspheming HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So sometimes a bracha is blasphemy. When is a bracha blasphemy? When a thief stole an item, and now wants to make a bracha on it. They both say, now what do you see from that? What do you see from that case? Now remember, what did Reuven steal? Reuven stole wheat. And now even though the wheat underwent this entire multi-level process of change, what do we say? is still considered to be a stolen object. To the point that now when he wants to eat mafresh challah from the loaf of bread, we tell him you can't do that. That's botzea berach ni'etz Hashem. You can't do that. What do you see from here? That even the changed wheat still remains the property of the owner. That's shinui bimkomo omed. Shinui bimkomo omed. Okay, excellent. Let's continue on the list. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Mahi. What's the case of Rabbi Shimon Elazar? The Sanyo Kalal Ze Amar Rabbi Shimon Elazar. Rabbi Shimon Elazar said, Kol shavach sheshbiach gazlon yado al yona. So we'll say. So now watch this. So Bryce says as follows. Here is the kalal. Here is the rule. The rule is that any shevach sheshbiach gazlon, right? So the thief steals an item, and now the item appreciates, right? And by the way, not just stam appreciates. Let's say the ganav did something. You can imagine. You give a simple case. You saw this yesterday's daf. The ganav steals an animal. What does he do? He fattens up the animal. So now the animal is objectively worth more. So now the Brisa says that appreciation, it belongs to the ganav. Yado al yona. So the Gemara says, literally translated, any appreciation that the stolen object has had while in the possession of the ganav, he has the upper hand. Ratza notel shvacho. If he wants, he could keep the appreciation. Ratza omer lo harishal chalafanecha. And if he wants, he could say to the owner of the object, here you go, I'm giving you back your animal as is. So the Gemara says, my comments, first of all, the statement doesn't make any sense, right? The Bryce doesn't make any sense, right? It said, any appreciation that the animal undergoes, so Yadal Yonah, the Ganav has the upper hand. And therefore what? He could keep the appreciation or he could give it back. So what does that mean? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshes HaChim, what it means to say. Here we go. Hishbicha notel shvacho. If the animal appreciates, the Ganav takes the appreciation. Kichesh Amar lo haresha chalafanecha shleshinoi bimkoma omed. So we'll say, what's the chap? Watch this, it's fascinating. Right? Ruvain steals the sheep. So now, if the animal appreciates, so what happens? That appreciation ultimately, again, belongs to the ganav. He gets to keep that. If the animal depreciates, what could he do? He could take the animal, give it back to the owner, and say what? I stole the sheep. I'm giving you back your sheep. We're done. Why? I will say, why is that? Because at the end of the day, shinui bimkomo omed. Because that sheep never left the domain of its owner. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, the sheep that Reuven stole is the sheep that Reuven is giving back. Here's the problem, with that statement. What's the problem? Ihachi afilu hishbiach nami. 1 second. You can't have it both ways. If you hold shinui bimkomo omed, right, that even when the animal undergoes a change, it never leaves the domain of the owner, then what, Rabbi say? Then what? If the animal appreciates, who should own that appreciation? Who should own it? The owner. In other words, if you hold shinui bimkomo omed, what that means is, Reuven stole the sheep from Shimon, now the sheep is still extant. So whether the sheep appreciated or depreciated, everything belongs to Shimon. So Reuven has the right to show back up at Shimon's house, give him back the sheep. But if you hold shinui bimkomo omed and the animal appreciates, why does Reuven the thief get to keep the appreciation? Well, that is incredible. The Gemara says, Amri mipnei takanas hashavim. We're going to talk more about this. We'll say why this was an enactment for the benefit of Bali Tshuva. I was about to say, in order to encourage people to do Tshuva, what did Chazal institute? Chazal said to the thief, you could keep the appreciation. So we'll say, what were Chazal concerned about? Like this. Reuven stole the sheep. And let's say he fed the sheep. He fattened up the sheep. So let's say now the sheep appreciated. But that appreciated because either, let's say, Reuven put in time, Reuven put in effort. If Reuven has to go ahead, it's hard. We'll say doing tshuva is hard. The problem is, if doing tshuva is going to cost me money, chances are that what? The thief is not going to do it. So therefore, if we allow the thief to keep the appreciation, we're much more confident that he's going to do tshuva. So therefore, because of takanas hashavim, for a takana ultimately again to facilitate tshuva, we allow Reuven the thief to keep the appreciation. Pretty incredible. So we'll say, so that's Shimon Elazar. So really, Shimon Elazar holds shinui bimkomo omed. The animal never leaves the domain of the owner, and therefore, technically speaking, the owner bears the depreciation or the appreciation. But in order to facilitate tshuva, we allow the ganav to keep the appreciation. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Rabbi Shmuel, you both say, what's the case of Rabbi Shmuel? It's Rabbi Shmuel Mahi. The Sanya, mitzvahs peah. the mitzvah of peyah, lahafrish min hakama. So it's a very interesting case over here. We know it's halacha peyah. You have to leave a corner of your field for the poor. Fine. Lo hifrish min hakama, mafrish min ha'omrim. Let's say you harvested your wheat. So you didn't leave a corner. What do you do if you don't leave a corner? Fine, you leave it from the bundles. You leave the equivalent from the bundles. Lo hifrish min ha'omrim. Let's say you didn't leave it from the bundles, mafrish min hakri. So fine, you go ahead and you leave it from the pile. Ad shelo merchu. So leave it from the pile before the pile was smooth. Merchu. What happens if the pile was already smooth? Now, here's the problem. Not problem, but just technical issue. Once the pile was smoothed, now there's an obligation of meiser. So now we'll say, what do you do? Ma'aser v'nosein lo. Right? So ultimately, again, you take meiser, but you still give pay afterwards as well. Rabbi Shmuel said, af mafish mina isa v'nosein lo. Wow. Let's say Rabbi Shmuel goes so far to say you could even separate out payah from the loaf. Now remember again, payah is one of those things, first mentioned in payah, that doesn't have a shear. Right? It doesn't have a shear. So the ma'aseh again, you can go ahead and separate any amount, but the idea Rabbi Shmuel is saying is that what? You even have to separate out payah from the loaf. Now what does that show you? What does that show you? That shows you shinui b'mkomo omed, meaning what? The aniyim are entitled to payah, and no matter how much you change the form of those stalks of wheat, you're still gonna have to pay your payah. Incredible. So we'll say, so now what do you see? Now we finish the list. So Abai brought down all of these opinions to show us this is the group, this is the chavra who holds shinui bimkomo omed. We'll say, by the way, I apologize. I know it's chilly in here. The heat's not working. Sorry. We're building a new building. So again, I believe the HVAC system dedication is still open. Right? So I apologize. Hopefully tomorrow. So it's working like 20%. So I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to So Papa said to Abaye, Ich bil kol hani taran lashronim kibei shamai. Now say, so now listen to this. Papa said to Abaye, okay, shkayach, you gave me a whole list of people who hold shinui bimkomo omed. So, why? I was saying in general, first of all, it's much simpler. Just say that Beis Shammai holds that shinui bimkomo omed. That's enough. Just, we don't need to go through every single individual who holds that shinui bimkomo omed. Once you say Beis Shammai holds shinui bimkomo omed, okay, whoever gets by and gets by, and whoever doesn't, doesn't. Amalei hakikam. This is what it means to say lo nechlaku Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel b'davar zeh. Now we'll say actually what Abai was coming to add that halacha l'maisa even Beis Hillel agrees with Beis Shammai. Right? In fact, there's no machlokas. We thought there was machlokas earlier on, but in fact, there is no machlokas. And halacha l'maisa, even Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel don't disagree. Amar Rava. So Rava said like this. Rava say so again. So that was really the chiddush that Abai was trying to convey over here. That even Beis Hillel agrees with Beis Shammai that Shem Komo Omen. Rava said, now watch this. Rava says no, it's not really true. In fact, there is actually going to be a novelty in mentioning all of these people. Why? Because we're going to see, fascinatingly enough, there's a unique chiddush in each of these people. Watch this. Amar Rava Mimai. Tilma adkan lo ka'amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda hasam ela b'tzeva ho'ov yachal la'aviro ayidei tzafon. So listen, I watch this. Maybe I would have thought like this. I would have thought that maybe Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, maybe he doesn't hold shinui b'komo omed. The only reason he holds, I will say, that even if you dye the wool of the Reishis Hagaz, you still have to give the first share to the Kohen. Is why? Why? Because dyeing is a reversible process. Right? You could remove the dye with detergent. So maybe that's why ultimately, again, even if you go ahead and you dye the wool, you still have to give it to the Kohen. But maybe normally he doesn't hold shinui b'mkomo omed. Furthermore, va'adkan lo karim Beis Shammai hasam ela legavoa mishum demis. Furthermore, maybe Beis Shammai holds that by the esnan zona, even if the item changes form, the reason why you can't give it to the Beis Hamikdash is not because of shinui b'mkomo omed. Rather, why? Remember, we'll say, the more holy something is, the greater its sensitivity to unholiness. So you're going to start going ahead and giving something used in the payment of a zona, even if it changed form. So maybe dafka in that case, that's where we say that even if it changed form, even multiple times, you still can't use it in the mikdash. Right? Maybe normally it doesn't hold shinui b'mkomo omed. Furthermore, Vad kan lo kamar Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov hasam ela inyan bracha mishum dahavile mitzvah haba ba'avera. Furthermore, again, about Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, remember again, what was Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov's case? That was a case of stolen wheat that's made into a loaf of bread. And he asked, what bracha do you make when you're mafresh challah? And he said, you can't make a bracha botzeh berach ni'etz Hashem. Maybe that's not a din in shinoi b'mkomo omed. Rather, what is it a din in? Bracha mitzvah ba'avera. Okay. Vad kan, lo kam Rabbi Shimon Elazar hasam ella b'hachosha dehadar. Furthermore, again, in Rabbi Shimon Elazar's case, which remember again was the situation of where the animal appreciates, right? Ultimately in the domain of the gazlan. So maybe that's a different kind of case. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, I should say, it depreciates. Depreciation is reversible. In other words, the animal lost some weight, ultimately again when it's with the gazlan. So again, you can put back the weight on. Maybe that's where they hold you. That's where they hold you can return the animal as is. V'adkan lo kamar Rabbi Shmuel hasam el inyan peah mishum dichsiv ta'azov yisera. Furthermore, maybe Rabbi Shmuel doesn't really hold Shiurim b'mkomo omed, but rather again by peah he holds that even if you fail to separate it in the field, you have to separate it even from the loaf. Why? Because I will say the Torah uses an extra word tazov a second time to teach you have to give peah no matter what. So I will say the point that Rav is trying to make over here is that halacha l'maisa, Abai is trying to line up these opinions all as falling behind Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about, or at least Beis Shammai, about Shinoi b'mkomo omed. All the Gemara is suggesting is maybe not. Maybe these are unique cases, but don't necessarily paint the picture of Shinoi b'mkomo omed. Okay, interesting. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, V'chi tema ligmar minei. Maybe you'll say, learn it out from this case of Peah. To which the Gemara says, matnos aniyim shiny. Let's say you can't really learn araya from matnos aniyim. That it could very well be that in general the Torah Kedosha goes out of its way to make sure that the aniyim get their due, get what they are entitled to, and you can't necessarily extrapolate from that to Gans Torah. Rabbi Yonasan says, my time is Rabbi Shmuel. Why does Rabbi Shmuel hold Rabbi say that if you fail to separate out peah from standing grain, from bundles, from piled grain, that you even have to separate out from the loaf of bread? What's his logic? Mishum de kasavar shinoi enakona. Oh, so is it that he holds shinoi, as we were calling it, shinoi b'mkomo omed, or shinoi enakona, that even when an object changes form, it still remains in the possession of the original owner? Oh, dilma ba'alma kasavar shinoi kona, or maybe not. Maybe Rachayl really holds no. When an object undergoes a change, it really does leave the domain of the original owner. So what's happening over here? Mishum dechsev tazov yisera. Here it's different. Why? Because there's an extra tazov. There's an extra tazov. So we'll say, what is it? Remember, what does tazov mean? Tazov means you have to leave it behind. Maybe that extra tazov means you have to give peah, no matter what the object is, in a wheat form, in a piled form, in a loaf form, whatever it is, you need to give peah. So we'll say, so that's the shayla. Why does Rabbi Shmuel hold, which essentially is what Rav was trying to bring out over here. Why does Rabbi Shmuel hold that way? Is it because he holds shinui b'mkomo omed, or shinui enakona? Or is that he holds, no, this is a unique din by peah, because it says tazov twice. And if you hold, and if Rabbi Shmuel holds that the reason why you have to give peah even from the loaf of bread is because shinui enakona, then tazov yisera de kasav rachman alamali. Then enachinami, why do I need that second tazov? Furthermore, v'sul rabbanon, tazov yisera de kasav rachman alamali. And according to the Rabbanon Rabosai, according to the Rabbanon who hold that once it gets to loaf form, you are no longer obligated in peah. So ultimately, again, what do they use that extra tazov for? They need it for the following case. Well, it's an interesting case. Hamafkir karmo. So this is actually interesting. This is I guess what we would call like a Talmudic or a biblical like tax loophole. Meaning, I would say, I don't want to be on the hook for trumas and maasros. So the easy fix. What's the easy fix? Easy fix. Be mafkir your property. If you don't own it, you're not chayiv. There's only one downside of being mafkir property, which is anyone could take it. So what do you do? Listen to this interesting case. A mafkir karmo. So Reuven goes ahead and makes his vineyard hefker. V'hishkim baboker ubatzra. I will say now he has a good chap, right? So he makes it hefker at night, and very early the next morning he's out there in the vineyard, taking everything that he wants. So what's the halacha? Chayiv beperet uba olalos, uba shichacha, uba peya. So we'll say, doesn't work. I mean, it does work a little bit. Upater mina meiser. So we'll say, what it does do is, that legal loophole, see, technically it speaks, technically it works, excuse me. So now remember again, when Reuven's out there the next morning, he is collecting fruit from an ownerless field. So therefore, again, what's his liability? Should technically be nothing. Chazal said no. Anything that is due to the poor, you're going to be chayiv. So we'll say, so right, remember again, peret, odolos, that's if you leave behind the grape, or if you leave behind the cluster, that belongs to the poor. Shichacha and peya, that belongs to the poor as well. What do you get out of? Trumas and meisos. Excuse me, I should say meiser. Meiser you get out of. So it works like that. So therefore, the second, according to the Rabbanon, Tazov teaches you this halacha. Okay, I'm Rabbi Shmuel. Halacha Rabbi Shimon Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda is saying Shmuel that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon Elazar. I both say so. Okay, so now let's look at what we have over here. Right? What do we have? What we have is a fundamental machlokas. Right? Reuven steals an object from Shimon. The object undergoes a fundamental change, whatever the change is. Now again, we will see in the world of change, there is a chilik, there may be a chilik between reversible change and irreversible change. We'll circle back for that. But right now, let's just go with this idea. Reuven steals an object from Shimon, and I will say the item undergoes a change. What's the machlokes? The machlokes says, do we say shinui kona or shinui eina kona? Does a change now put that item in the domain or under the ownership of the thief or not? That's our machlokes. Our Mishnah clearly said yes. But now Abaye brought all of these opinions that clearly say shinui bimkomo omed. Okay, so now said this is our fundamental yisodistic machlokes. So now watch this. Here is where it's going to get great. I'm going to Shmuel. Halacha Rabbi Shimon Elazar. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Elazar. And I was saying, now what did Rabbi Shimon Elazar hold? Rabbi Shimon Elazar again was the case who said before that halacha l'maisa. Essentially, Rabbi Shimon Elazar holds that shinui bimkomo omed. Right? He holds that or shinui eina kona, that even if the object undergoes a change, halacha l'maisa, the object never left the domain of the original owner. So remember again, how do we illustrate that? Reuven stole a sheep from Shimon. The sheep loses 25 pounds. Right, 25 pounds. So what happens? What could Reuven do? Reuven gives the sheep back to Shimon. That's not the sheep that you stole. Yes, it is, because the sheep never left the domain. Now, I'll say, now remember again, what about the reverse case? What about when the sheep appreciates? So what was the halacha there? Remember again, what did Shimon Elazar say? The thief keeps the appreciation. Right? But remember again, why does the thief keep the appreciation? Why? That was takanas hashavim. That was to facilitate and encourage tshuva. So a separate consideration. So now comes along Rabbi Yehuda, says that in the name of Shmuel, the halacha Shimon Elazar. So the Gemara says, really? Did Shmuel really say that the halacha follows of Shimon Elazar? Is that true? So v'ha'amar Shmuel, ein shamin, lo legana v'lo legazlon, elo l'nizakin. Ultimately, we do not evaluate things. Not for a ganov and not for a gazlan, only for damages. Now, what does that mean? We'll say, particularly Rashi. Rashi is almost right across. In Shamin, beperek rishon gave bailim metaplin benevela, amar Shmuel delenizakin hu dishamin es hanavela lenizak umosef ala mazik at shemashlim lo nisko. But remember again, we saw this. It feels like many years ago. We saw the sugya, right? So we'll say, remember again, we saw this that Reuven's ox scores Shimon's ox. So what's the halacha? We take the dead animal of Shimon, right? The dead ox, the nevela. We assess how much it's worth. Right? We saw machlokes who has to dispose of the nevela, but that nevela is worth a certain amount of money. So it's on then the damaged party to recapture the value of the nevela, and then the damager has to make up the rest. That's how damages work. Make up the rest. So Shmuel said that Allah said the only time we evaluate a carcass is either ultimately again for nezikin, for damages, but not for theft. What does that mean for theft? Or I'll say, what does that mean? That halacha l'maisa, the way theft works is Reuven steals an animal from Shimon. We see what the stolen animal was worth at the time of the theft, and that's what Reuven owes Shimon. That's Reuven's own Shimon, which Rabbi say is another way of saying shinui kona. Shinui kona. That Shmuel seems to say that when a thief steals an item, ultimately again he acquires that item. So if he acquires the item, then at the end of the day, How could Shmuel say that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? What's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, Bishlam the Rava, the Amar Ki Kamar Shimon Elazar Hasam Ba'achisha the Hadar Lokasha. So we'll say, now watch this. So according to Rava, this works fine. Why? Because Rava said that Rabbi Shimon Elazar's case was talking about ultimately a depreciation that's reversible, or a change that's reversible. Therefore, again, Kika Amar Halach Reb Shimon Elazar, the Shunim Bimkama Omeid Ba'achasha Dahadar. Therefore, I will say you could see, when did Shmuel say that the halacha follows Reb Shimon Elazar? Only, right, namely, that Shinoi Bimkama Omeid, that ultimately, again, the animal never leaves the domain of its owner. That's in the case of a reversible change. The Chikam Shmuel Hasam in Shomano the Ganav Gazlon El Nizakin Bachasha Delo Hadar. And ultimately, again, when does Shmuel say Shinui Kona? That's in the case of an irreversible change. But according to Abaye, who said that Rabbi Shimon Elazar even stated his view that Shinui Bimkama Omeid, even with what? Even with an irreversible change. Ultimately, again, so what is there to say? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, did I just skip a line? Yeah, Ela Bai, the Amar, Kikam Shon Elazar Bachasha, the Lo Hadar, Ka'amar, Ma'ikal Meimar. So the Gemara says, Abaye Masni Hachis. Abaye ultimately, again, would explain it like this. Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda said in Shmuel, will say, Amar Beis, Amru Halacha Rav Shimon Elazar, V'lei Lo Sviralei. So we'll say, so that's how you have to say it. So according to Abaye, he says like this. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon Elazar, but Shmuel himself does not agree with that. Right? Shmuel was saying it seems to be that the general approach is like Rabbi Shimon Elazar, but Shmuel himself does not hold that way. Incredible. Amar Rav Yochanan, Dvar Torah, Gzeila Hanishtanis Chozeres Beinei. We'll say, now watch this. So we'll say, so we're still, it's really, really very interesting, right? So our fundamental machlokes is, you have a stolen object, Reuven steals an object from Shimon, the object undergoes a change. Again, I will say, now remember, what we have to keep in the back of our mind is, in the world of change, there's two levels of change. There's reversible change and irreversible change. So that's still playing out over here. So we'll say, but now our fundamental shaila is, Reuven steals an object from Shimon, ultimately, again, the object changes. What's the halacha? Do we say shinui kona, in which case the ganav has effectively acquired the object, now he's obligated to pay money, right? Value of the stolen item at the time it was stolen, or no, shinui eno kona, the object is never acquired by the ganav, and therefore again, if the object is extant, the ganav is obligated to give it back as is. See, here we go. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chibar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan, Dvar Torah, listen to this, here we go, incredibly exciting. Dvar Torah, Midaraisa, Gzela Hanishtanis, Chozeres Be'enei. Wow. So we'll say, so now Rabbi Chibar Abba wants to say like this. Midaraisa, a stolen object, even if it changes, never leaves the domain of its owner. And is returned as is. Right? That's Midaraisa. Look at Rashi. Hanishtanis, Rashi says, third line from the top, Afa pishin ishtana chozeres be'inei kimos shehi achshav va'afilu hishbicha d'shinui lo kani. So I will say, I was saying, guys, let's just understand, we're only arguing the Rabbanans. Because Midah Oraisa, the halacha is, a stolen object never leaves the domain of its owner, and therefore, even if it increases, decreases, whatever it is, halacha l'maisa, and the job of the ganav is, if the object is in existence, give it back. Give it back. That's it. Shneimar ve'hishav es hagzela asher gazal mikol makom. Because also, what does the pasuk say? What's the job of the ganav? Return the stolen object. Ve'hishav es hagzela asher gazal. We'll say mikol makom means that's it. In any case, right? Torah doesn't qualify that statement. The halacha is, you stole something, the object is still in existence, give it back. Done. Nothing more to talk about. So the Gemara says, the imtar Mishnah say no. We'll say, what about our Mishnah? Then we'll say, now remember again, he's talking about our Mishnah. What's our Mishnah? We'll say, what was our Mishnah? Hagozel eitzim v'asan kelim. You stole wood. You made it into utensils. You stole wool. You made it into clothing. What's the halacha? Mishalim kishas hagzela. We'll say, what does the Mishnah say? What's the halacha? What does the thief get to do? What does the thief get to do? He gets to keep the object. And what does he have to do? He has to pay money. But I don't understand. Rabbi, you just said, midaraisa, the Heshav Zela says, return the object you stole. Okay, I stole wood and now it's a bowl. Who cares? You stole wood, give it back. I stole a wool, now it's a sweater, give it back. So I say, so what? So I don't understand. How do you reconcile? How do you reconcile the da'oraisa halacha of giving back the object that you stole with the Mishnah that says you could keep the changed object? We'll say, here we go. Get ready for this. In TORAH Mishnah Seinu, Mishum Takanas Hashavim. We'll say the Mishnah is reflecting a consideration to enable tshuva. We'll say, you have to understand, halacha has a vested interest in Balei Tshuva. Halacha has a vested interest in getting people and facilitating tshuva and making it as easy as possible. So what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says like this: Ruvain stole an object from Shimon. Right? He took the wood, he made it into a bowl. We'll say, you know how people connect with their bowls, right? So, or Lamaisa, he stole wool and he made it into one of those fancy, like Happy Hanukkah sweaters. You know, once you wear that, right, you don't want to give that back. So now, here's the problem, right? If the Ganav has to return the object, what's going to happen? He's not going to do tshuva. So the Mishnah says, fine, you know what? Keep the object. And I'll pay money. But I'll say, by the way, I think there's another piece to this also. And I will say, returning a stolen object to someone is incredibly humiliating. Right? Incredibly humiliating. And especially if you could imagine, if you took the object and you turned it into someone else, can you imagine? Right? Ruvain stole the wool from Shimon and he shows up with a Happy Hanukkah sweater. Right? Can you just, like the embarrassment of it. Right? What's the nice part of returning money? We'll say, what's the nice part? You write a check, you put it in an envelope, you drop it in the mailbox, and you could go home. So we'll say, I don't think it's just about the fact that the Ganav may have an attachment to the object, and therefore if you make him give back the object, he's not going to do tshuva. It's also that if tshuva becomes too embarrassing, right? People are it's not just a financial thing. It's just if it's just awkward. Tshuva is awkward as it is. But what's the best part? Is you get to be awkward with a force and an entity you can't see. Right? I could deal with the awkwardness because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not standing right in front of me. Let's say that's why a lot of times, the areas in life where often we have the greatest amount of unresolved issues, it's interpersonally. Why? We know why. Because it's very difficult to go up to someone and to say, you know what, I hurt you, and I'm really sorry. Or I did this to you, and it's awkward. So very often what we just do is that's why dealing with things bin adam lamakom is infinitely easier than dealing with things bin adam lachavero. We know, I don't need to go. So there's an awkwardness associated with this. So what are Chazal doing? Both from a financial perspective as well as from an awkwardness perspective. Chazal said, okay, you know what? Just give him a check. Whatever the item was worth at the time that you stole it, give him a check and be done. And let's move on. That's Takanas Hashem. So I will say, this is a fascinatingly riveting model. So Rabbi Bar Abba is saying, Mida'oraisa ein shinui kona, or shinui ein kona. Right? Or shinui bimkomo omed. Whatever verbiage you want to use. Mida'oraisa, you stole an object, give back an object. But the Mishnah says, if you made an object into something else, you could keep the object and give him the money. That's Takanas Hashavim. That's to facilitate tshuva. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan say this. Rabbi Yochanan, halacha kistan mishnah. But Rabbi Yochanan himself said that the halacha follows the stam mishnah. Right? Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha follows the stam mishnah. So we'll say, so what's going on over here? So the Gemara says, Utanan, lo hispik litno ad shetzeva opater. Yet also we learned, again, right beforehand, what do we say? That halacha b'rishus nakas, for shearings. If ultimately, again, you took your first shearing, which you should have given to the Kohen, but what happened? You forgot, or you didn't get a chance to give it until you dyed it. What's the halacha? Pater. But again, let's say, but according to Rabbi Yochanan holds that midaraisa shinui bimkomo omeid. Even if you dyed the wool, you should have to give it to the Kohen. Amar lahu hahu midrabanan. No. That's also reflecting midrabanan. Rabbi Yaakov, I read that wrong. Amar lahu, hahu midrabanan. There was a particular member of the rabbis, Rabbi Yaakov Shmei, and Rabbi Yaakov was his name. And how do you explain it? Ledidi mefarshi leminate Rabbi Yochanan. What was Rabbi Yochanan's case? Kigon shegazel eitzim meshupin va'asa and kalim. What's that? The case was where you stole wood that was meshupin. Meshupin means it was planed, right? It was already smoothed out, and you made it into utensils. The havile shinoi hachozer libriaso. So I'll say that's the case ultimately of what? Of a reversible change. Now take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here. Rashi says, "Masnisin muki la Rabbi Yochanan begozla eitzim meshupin mishum haki Rabbi Yochanan the time of mishum takaras hashavimu the shinoi ki hai lav shinoihu." So what I could very well be that interesting of the way Rabbi Yochanan interprets our Mishnah is the case of Gazel Eitzim V'Asam Kli was talking about a reversible change. So because it's a reversible change, ultimately again, even the Mishnah itself doesn't reflect, the Mishnah reflects the Doraisa. Right? The Mishnah reflects the Doraisa. Ultimately again, it's a case of there's no shinoi, I should say differently. There's no real change in the object itself. Okay, Shabbos. So bottom line, we're still at the same point with this machlokes, right? So now here's what we have. We have a general machlokes, shinui bim koma omed or shinui in bim koma omed, right? Or shinui kona, shinui ena kona. Thief steals an object undergoes a change. Does the thief acquire it or not? That's our machlokes. The machlokes became a bit more complicated because Rabbi Yochanan came along and said that mid'araisa, ultimately again shinui ena kona. That's what he said, right? Midaraisa, v'heshev esagzela, you stole an object, return it. What about the Mishnah? So now we have two possible interpretations, ultimately again, of the Mishnah. So we'll say, so that's kind of what's hanging out there right now. We haven't done over the Zusha. We'll say, here we go. Get ready for this. Tanra Abanon. Hagazlonin, Umulave, we're supposed to say, this, Jeremy, if you have like 2 minutes, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this one. I'm just saying. I don't mean to go. Go. I'm just kidding. So have a great day. Right? So watch this. Just listen to it later. So this is absolutely incredible. I will say this is overwhelmingly amazing. Here we go. Tanra Banan Hagazlonin umalave beribis shech zero. We'll say here we go. Watch this. So gazlonin are thieves. And ultimately, again, malave beribis, people who lend with interest. Who now both are returning their objects. So both say, get ready for this. So now we're talking about Ruvain stole from Shimon, or Ruvain lent with interest to Shimon, right? One of those two things. Ein mekablim mehen. So both say, so now Ruvain wants to be about Shuma. He returns the stolen object, or he returns the object. He returns the interest. What's the halacha? Ein mekablim mehen. You don't accept the money, or you don't accept the money. So we'll say, hear what's happening over here. So let's just get this straight. Ruvain steals from Shimon. Steals Shimon's sheep. He now wants to be about tshuva. He shows back up to Shimon's house with the stolen object. Shimon is supposed to say what? Thank you, but it's okay. You can keep it. Right? The Gemara says, and if you accept the stolen object or the interest money back, Chazal are not happy with you. It's wild. Both say, why? What's going on over here? So, Rabbi Yochanan said, we made Rabbi Nishnas Mishnah Zu. This Mishnah was taught during the days of Rabbi. What happened? Disanya. Both say, here we go. There was a story with a guy who wanted to do tshuva. And what happened? His wife told him, you are a fool. Because if you do tshuva, afilu avneit eno shelcha. Ultimately, again, your belt isn't even yours. In other words, what was she saying to him? This guy was not only he wasn't like a recreational thief, right? He was a mumcha, right? This is what he did, right? To the point that everything he had in his life was stolen. So his wife said to him, you're a fool. You want to be about tshuva? Oh, you woke up on the inspired side of the bed this morning? That's fantastic. But just understand, if you're going to be about tshuva and start giving back all the stuff you stole, you own nothing. You won't even have a belt. What happened? V'nimna v'lo asad tshuva. He didn't do tshuva. His wife was right. He didn't do tshuva because he couldn't. Rabbi say essentially, as we said before, he was ready to do tshuva, but I'm going to have nothing. I'm going to have nothing. What am I going to do? Ba'osa shah amru. In that moment, Chazal said, "Hagazlanin umalave ribios." Ultimately, again, those who go ahead and steal or lend with interest, shech ziran ein mekablin mehen. If they try to pay you back, you can't accept it. V'amakabel mehen. And ultimately, again, one who does accept it from them, ein ruach chachamim nochahemenu. So I will say, is this not an absolutely incredible Gemara? Right. So Chazal said in that moment, again, I will say, this is takanas shavim. Right. This ultimately, again, is the takana in order to facilitate tshuva. So Chazal said in that moment, when somebody steals something and they want to return it to you, ultimately, again, don't accept it. Somebody lent you money with interest. They want to be about tshuva. They want to go ahead and give you back the money. Don't accept it. Why? Because this facilitates tshuva. So I will say now, when a person steals, and a person lends with interest, and now they want to do tshuva, what do they know? They know that when they return it, what are you going to say to them? It's okay. And I will say, what does that enable the person to do? It enables them to do tshuva. I will say, I just want to point out something absolutely amazing. I will say, so first of all, you see from here, now you'll say to yourself, okay, that's beautiful, except if what? Except if you're the victim, right? In other words, so this is really inspiring. This is beautiful, right? Reuven stole from Shimon. Reuven comes back. Reuven, I want to be about tshuva. And again, the halacha says, just let him keep the object. Okay, so that's nice. But now Shimon's out a sheep, right? Or Shimon's out the interest. So we'll say, what do you see from here? That each and every yid has a vested interest in the tshuva of the other. At the end of the day, that's what we need. I need you to be about tshuva. You need me to be about tshuva. And if that means that I'm going to give up my sheep, I'm going to give up my money, then that is the investment that I am willing to make in another yid's tshuva. And I will say, why? Because investing in your being about tshuva and you're investing in me being about tshuva, at the end of the day, is the greatest, most incredible investment a Jew could ever make. That's number one. We'll say number two. Where did this whole thing come from? This is the craziest Gemara you're ever going to see. Chazal made this whole takana based on what? One guy. Look how the Gemara is introduced to it, right? The Gemara says, Maisa ba'adam echad. It doesn't say, Chazal saw a number of different episodes of people who weren't doing tshuva. It will say, this was Maisa ba'adam echad. One guy. Chazal made a whole takana based on one guy. We'll say that never happens in halacha. Chazal will say, do you know in general in halacha what happens if it's just one guy? What happens in halacha if anything is just one guy? We ignore it. That's what we call in halacha miyut she'ena matzui. Nothing. Halacha doesn't legislate based on one guy, except when it comes to tshuva. Let's say if there's the possibility of enabling one yid to be about tshuva, enabling one Jew to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then if halacha has to turn the entire system on its head to bring one Jew back, then that is what halacha is ready to do. I will say the power of becoming about tshuva, the power of reconciling with the divine, the power of ultimately again reconnecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chazal are willing to totally turn around the system of halacha. We are willing to give up money so that each of us can become about tshuva. I will say that is the power of tshuva. We have to stop over here for today, but ultimately, I will say, so we'll pick up with this tomorrow, Mir Hashem. But I will say, but what a way to begin the week. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, maybe for each of us, this is a week of tshuva, right? We all have an area in which we have to become bali tshuva, right? We often use the phrase of a bal tshuva to refer to someone who doesn't necessarily live an affiliated life. But the truth is, it's not true. All of us have to become bali tshuva. Maybe we're starting off Sunday. We're starting off the first day of the week with the sugi of tshuva. Maybe there's an incredible opportunity, incredible koach and yahrzeit Hashem this week for each of us to find the area where we want to become a bal tshuva and know that halacha is behind us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is behind us, and we are behind one another. Shkoyach.